Hey, it's What's Up Wednesday with James, and it's a beautiful morning out this morning. Little nip in the air, beautiful fall day, and it appears probably in the next couple of days we're going to have a tremendous amount of rain with Hurricane Ian, and we want to first and foremost remember those folks that are in the path of that hurricane. We hope and pray that everybody is safe and sound, and you know the damage of a hurricane can be pretty intense, and so we pray that everybody makes it through that. And just want to keep everybody in our thoughts and prayers. So today we're going to talk a couple things, and I'm going to piggyback off of last week. And what I want to share with you this week, number one, is during the due diligence period, a buyer has the right to inspect the property. And they hire a inspector, and they go out and do the inspection. And the inspection is very thorough. And it comes back, and the buyer and buyer's agent prepares a document called Amendment to Address Concerns. Well, they send that over to the seller and the listing agent, and they get together and they agree to do certain things or not do certain things. And so what I have come to find out in my endeavors in real estate, that I would rather, instead of the seller fixing something for the buyer, I think it would be better if the buyer is if the buyer has the means to fix something themselves, meaning they have the discretionary funds. I think I'd rather the buyer fix what they want to fix, when they want to fix it, by whom they want to fix it, instead of allowing the seller to fix something that I may or may not, as a buyer, like the way they fixed it. Sometimes a seller may hire somebody that fixes something that may not be done just exactly how the buyer wants it done. And then at the end of the day, they get to the walkthrough a few days before closing, maybe a few hours before closing, and they noticed 4 or 5 items were done not to their satisfaction. And of course, it should be done in good workmanlike manner per the contract, but then you've got an issue at the closing table because the buyer's not happy for the work that the seller done. So instead of doing an amendment to address concerns, why not just do an amendment to the agreement that says that the seller will give a concession back to the buyer, and that way the buyer can then fix whatever items they want to fix when they want to fix it. Karen and I have lived in our home for almost 8 years, and there's still things I do to the house every year and fix things the way we want it to make it our home as we have the budget to do so and wish to move forward. So if the buyer does have discretionary funds, I think that's the best way to do it. And I think as we continue to see transactions develop, we think that at the end of the day, just allow that buyer to go ahead and fix it. And listen, it's simple. The seller can either give a concession back toward the buyer's closing cost. So if 6 or 7 items ended up being $2,000, just have an amendment to the agreement that states that the seller shall give a concession in the amount of $2,000 toward the buyer's closing cost. Or you can also have it reduced off the sales price. And that way you have taken care of that item, and the buyer can be comfortable fixing those items that they want to fix based upon how they want to do it, when they want to do it, and use whatever contractor they wish to use. So I hope that's helpful. Second item, Ryan and I, my managing broker, my son, were talking the other day, and we're seeing, especially on the financing contingency exhibits, that sometimes that an agent will leave the interest rate blank, or they leave an item blank. And so for whatever reason, they hurry up and get the contract bound, and we've got an item of compliance issue where a blank has been left blank. And first and foremost, blanks should never be left blank. And by the way, another tidbit on that, don't ever put TBD, which stands for to be determined, on any blank. And the reason being is, who's going to determine when, where, why, to the known fact of that particular blank? So don't do that. If it's a non-applicable item, put NA. But always fill in blanks. Never leave a blank blank. So if you know that the interest rate is today around 7.5% or 6.5%, talk to the lender. Be proactive. Have that communication up front. Talk to the lender and say, hey, what's the interest rate that this client's going to be qualified for? And so if it's 6.5%, make sure you put 6.5%. Now, When we compliance a contract and we fail that contract because a blank is blank, for example, let's say in an FHA financing contingency exhibit that no one put a blank in there, and we fail them, and the agent goes back and fills in a interest rate. Let's just say they put 7%, but they don't get everybody to initial off on it. You just gave the buyer the opportunity to get out of that contract because that blank was left blank, or you filled it in and put 7% and didn't get all parties to initial it. So make sure anytime that you're amending something or changing something that you always get both parties to initial off on that. The amendment to the agreement is an easy way to do that. If you just go in and fill in a date there, you got to get those initials on that contract. So if you don't, then you're opening yourself up to a big can of worms as far as the buyer having the ability to walk away from the contract with no penalty, because both agents and both sets of buyers and sellers were not paying attention to the contract. What needed to be filled out properly. So make sure you don't leave any blanks blank. I can't emphasize that anymore. And if you don't know what to put in the blank, you got to reach out to somebody and find it. Whether you're reaching out to your managing broker, whether you're reaching out to your lender, put something in there, okay? Some people might even put par in there, so whatever the par interest rate is. But put something in there, and I always recommend, especially if I'm writing a contract for the buyer, I'm going to be in conversation with the lender to determine exactly what that interest rate is going to be. And if he says it's 6.5%, I'm putting 6.5%. So I hope that's been helpful. Other than that, I always enjoy doing What's Up Wednesday with you guys. I hope that it always brings you good value and helps you with your real estate endeavors. And thanks again for this opportunity. And notice my President's Cup. We had a great time, Karen and I, up in Charlotte, North Carolina last week, and the United States won 17.5 to 12.5. So it's always exciting when the USA takes home the victory. So anyway, guys, appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you again next week on What's Up Wednesday. Have a good week. Take care. Love you guys. See ya.